love a deep dive. I love to get way too into the weeds on a topic and just research entirely way too much about it. And I also love bringing my interests into The Sims 4. And I recently fell down this rabbit hole about split level homes and how they sort of came to be, and the broader art movements behind them, the cultural context, and the kind of people that kind of were influential into their creation. But first, it wouldn't be a real deep dive if I didn't go all the way to the start. So I want to start with this guy named Frank Lloyd Wright, and he's kind of accredited as the father of American architecture. He created the prairie style, which was kind of inspired by the flat landscapes of the American Midwest, and it was the first uniquely American architectural style that kind of kickstarted this century where America was really kind of influential in the architectural space. And something you have to remember is that in terms of art and architecture movements, everything is a reaction to the previous thing that came before it. Nothing is in a void. And that's kind of why we had to start with Frank Lloyd Wright to begin with. But with the prairie style and with this emergence of this American architectural movement, you have to understand that in the United States, the stuff that was being built before this was a lot of Gothic Revival, French Empire, Italiente kind of style homes. And Frank Lloyd Wright really wanted to do a new modern American style of architecture. Like, he wanted it to be distinctly different than kind of the traditional classic stuff that came before it. And he comes up with this idea of organic architecture, that architecture should be suited to its environment, it should be a product of its place, purpose, and time. And it's this very modernist idea, this kind of idea of form following function is something that's prevalent in a lot of different art movements at this time, not just the architectural ones. But Frank Lloyd Wright is kind of accredited with kind of beginning this idea, which I have to say, there is this phenomenon in the art, especially Western art canon, where some guy is attributed as like the beginner of this one idea. And certainly, you know, he popularized it and is super influential in kind of the architectural canon here. But I'm not saying that he was, you know, definitely the first guy to do this. There's been so many instances where there's been an artist or a person who's accredited with the beginner or something, and then it turns out there's someone who did it years before him, or even decades before him, or even centuries before him. Like, the reason that I say the Western art canon is that a lot of times there are other cultures who've been practicing a lot of these ideas for like way longer than, you know, Western world has, and then the Western world will be like, oh, this guy came up with this thing in the 60s, and then it's like, well, but this other culture has been doing it for hundreds and hundreds of years. Wouldn't you say that they started it? And so that's just something that I wanted to note that we should keep in mind when we're having any type of conversation about architecture, art movements, etc. But nonetheless, Frank Lloyd Wright is super influential in kind of how we get to the split level home. He also created the Usonian style of architecture, which if you guys like these videos, please let me know, because I would love to do more of these architecture deep dives with you. Usonian style of architecture is so interesting because it's the specifically American style of architecture. It literally stands for the United States of North Independent America, which I always, like, it's such a mouthful that I always have to think really hard before I say it because I'm gonna mess it up otherwise. But yeah, at some point I would love to deep dive into that architectural style. But to kind of go back to the prairie style, it was kind of characterized by these low horizontal lines. Like I said, it's inspired by the landscapes of the American Midwest. So it's flat, it's low to the ground, it's a little bit more expansive, it has open floor plans, it has these low-pitched roofs, it has overhanging eaves, it has this connection between the interior world and the exterior world. There's kind of this connection between inside and nature that's kind of happening in this prairie style. And I've been showing photos this whole time of different houses that are prairie style that Frank Lloyd Wright has created, and you might be thinking to yourself, these aren't that monumental. I've seen things like this before, or it's kind of interesting, I guess, but like, whatever. I want you to look at this house and now imagine a horse and a carriage showing up to it, because that is the time frame in which Frank Lloyd Wright is creating a lot of this stuff. It is not as contemporary as you might think it is by looking at it. Like, it's kind of mind-blowing to me, honestly. And like I said, prairie style, super influential to all of American architecture, but it's also specifically influential to the ranch style home, which was kind of accredited to this guy, Cliff May. And the ranch style is, in my opinion, kind of ubiquitous with like American homes. They're also called the American ranch. Like, it's just, you see these homes everywhere you go. It's very likely you live in a ranch style house if you live in the United States face of America. Like at one point in time, 9 in 10 homes being built in the US were ranch style homes. Like they're everywhere. And these homes are long, close to the ground. They have wide open layouts. You know, I think you're kind of seeing the connections between the ranch style and the prairie style. And the ranch style kind of fuses the more modernist ideas that are occurring at the time, you know, the idea of form following function with the concepts of, you know, American Western period of like wide open spaces, kind of the American frontier. A lot of the ranch style has attached garages, these L or U shaped layouts. And it's interesting because Cliff May, and he's the kind of beginning of this very influential ranch style in the United States, but he wasn't even an architect, I guess. He was a building designer, and he was only accredited as an architect for 1 year before he died, which is so unfortunate for him, but he's just so prolific. It's kind of interesting because he wasn't even like an architect. And I also think it's worth noting that ranch style was also heavily influenced by Spanish colonial architecture of the 17th through 19th century, which I would love to deep dive on that too, but like at a certain point we have to kind of get to where we're going, so I'm gonna breeze past that for now. But once again, if we want more of these, I'll do more of these because I love deep dives. Kind of understand how split level homes come about from the ranch style, we need a historical context of kind of what's going on in the United States at this time. Because really, the split level home and the ranch style became so popular because of the rise of the suburbs in the United States. After the Great Depression, there was this boom in the American suburbs. There was the HOLC, the Homeowners Loan Corporation, which was like this government-sponsored program as a part of the New Deal that specifically aimed to refinance homes that were on default to kind of prevent foreclosure. And it also allowed amortgaged mortgages, which were 20 to 30-year loans rather than 5-year loans that had like these massive balloon payments at the end that were super inaccessible to a lot of people. And after World War II, the government provided loans to veterans and a lot of subsidized corporate research and also built an interstate highway system. Unionization also peaked, which meant that wages rose, and sustainably there was more growth that contributed to this kind of like new consumer economy. And between the 1950s and 1970s, American suburban population doubled, which is crazy. That's so many people moving into the suburb, as well as appliance and automobile sales, which rose dramatically. And this kind of transformed the American landscape from like this agricultural thing to American suburbia that we know now. For better or for worse, I certainly have my opinions on American suburbia. I'll try to keep them a little bit more to myself, but I do think it is important to note that the rise of American suburbs is heavily tied to racism. Like, this is not a complete conversation without recognizing that and talking a little bit more about that. First of all, there was this concept called redlining that you might have heard of before, where banks and other organizations literally like took a red pen or a red marker to a map and like outlined areas, allocating the areas that they felt were unfit for their business, aka specifically denying Black residents from equal access to loans, housing, and even things like groceries. And it's crazy because you look at these maps and there'll be like this key and it'll literally be like red and it'll say hazardous. And because of the systematic exclusion of, you know, Black and other minority group cultures in these neighborhoods, there's kind of this phenomenon that happened called white flight, where people who had like racial anxiety kind of flood from cities into the suburbs, because while cities began to diversify, they, you know, we're racist. I think even like the term white flight is like crazy, and to call it like anxiety is wild because it's really just racism. So the beginning of American suburbia is like deeply intertwined with racism in this country. So American suburbia is kind of exploding around this time, and the split level home kind of comes about as a solution to this problem of American suburbs kind of expanding. There's this kind of concept as the ranch as like this American dream home, right? Like the new modern ideas of like wide open spaces, these attached garages that are kind of allowing you in your new car. And the split level came about in the 50s and 60s because it combined the ranch style with this theory that families needed 3 types of interior space. 1, a noisy kind of service area, a family room with a garage. 2, a kind of quiet living area, a living room, a dining room, and a kitchen. And 3, like a very quiet bedroom area. And so that kind of theory combined with all of the ranch style kind of produced the split level home. Split level home became really popular in the 50s and 60s because it maximized space, especially on sloped terrain. So it was very cost effective because you were able to construct it with less kind of terrain editing, which allowed for a lot of these builds to have a lot more square footage while being the same kind of footprint as a ranch home, and they're designed to kind of work around the environment that they're built on. Obviously, they're super popular in the Midwest, but the Midwest isn't, I don't know, the stereotype is flat, but it's not like so flat. You know what I mean? Like there's still some grade variation there, and so it was very cost effective in that way. And it allowed for a sense of grandeur because you have all these different floors in your house. It gives you the sense of this, grandiose multi-story home without the budget of a grandiose multi-story home because it's a lot more cost effective to build. They had this like combo of open floor plan and open space while also offering this kind of separation of space and lots of light and privacy. I think you can kind of see how the prairie style influenced the ranch style, which kind of morphed with these other ideas into the split level home. Split level home has like a few different types, and the internet, I don't know. I've tried researching this a little bit, and every single source says something different about the different types of split level that there are. I have most frequently seen like a side split where it's kind of staggered, where there's 2 stories on one side and then another story kind of in the middle, and the garage and living space are on the bottom. There's like a formal living room, a dining, and a kitchen in that kind of middle room, and then the top room is the bedrooms and bathrooms. There's also a back split where when you look at the house from the street, it looks like a 1 story, and then it's split into multiple stories on the back. There's a standard split where you kind of walk into a foyer and you're immediately met with the option of going up or down, and then those kind of split into their various categories. And like I said, mainly with the idea of like separating out these different types of spaces that families needed to have. And so this build that I'm currently working on in the background as we have this whole conversation is a standard split home where you walk into a foyer and you have the option of going up or down. There's also the stack split, which is just like a lot more splits. Like that house can have like 4 to 6 different levels. And now that I'm done with this whole spiel, I wanted to jump in, give you a tour of this house that we just did, and then do a build with me where I kind of show you how to do a realistic split level home following all the principles that I just kind of outlined. Okay, so here is the house that I was building in the speed build behind my little lecture there. So it is a standard split, as I said, and I made it like a really cluttered kind of family home style. Walk in and you are met with the foyer, which this is kind of what I did with that. And then the first option to go down, you go into the family living room, more cluttered, more messy. They have a dog, a little computer nook area, and then a downstairs bathroom, which I imagine that, the family uses most often, this downstairs bathroom. Also, there is a big garage here. They have one of those fridges that's like just for drinks in the garage. And also, I imagine that someone here loves to garden. It's a kind of stereotypical family when I kind of put it together, but I think it turned out really cute. And the laundry room is right there. And then there's kind of another way out back here, so I'll just go over that really quickly. This is the backyard. They've got a slide, more dog toys, gardening area, one of those like kids block things, and then they have a patio, which we'll get to in a second. If you go up the stairs, the kitchen is in this area here. They have a dining room, dog bowls, a little calendar. I don't know. I thought that this build was really cute, and I actually kind of want to play in this house now. I just think I did a really good job, honestly, not to pat myself on the back too much, but I really like this build. And then over here, if you go up another step into the bedroom area, this is another bathroom that the kids would use a lot. The first bedroom here on the right is a room for, I imagine, like a boy and a toddler. So this is their room. And then up here, this is a teen girl's bedroom. Really cluttered. I went to town in this room. I think this room is so cute, though. So I think that really worked. Across the way, this is the parents' room. Still kind of cluttered. They got a TV in their bedroom. They have their own bathroom here, which is a little bit more put together, a little bit nicer. Obviously, they also have the balcony out the dining way. And so this is that. And then this is also an example of more kind of neat kind of, what's it called, landscaping in order to hide the kind of level difference. If you do want this house, the tray files are going to be in the description. It's not on the gallery, unfortunately, and same with the house that I'm about to show you me building. Before I start a split level house, and before you start a split level house, I think the easiest thing to do is to find a floor plan, which I know is kind of boring to not just make it up out of your mind, but the whole premise of these split level homes being the differentiation of space, this just kind of prevents you from having a really unrealistic floor plan, or prevents you from having a floor plan that doesn't make a whole ton of sense, especially if you're getting into a split level that has like 4, 5, or 6 different levels to it. It can get kind of confusing with like what level is what. I'll link a bunch of places that you can find different floor plans down below. But first, we're looking at clickamericana.com, and this has a split level 3-bed from the 50s. And so this is more of like a traditional plan from when split levels were first getting popular, but a split level home doesn't necessarily have to be of a certain time frame. You can build a realistic split level house in this game and have it be modern architecture, or, you know, anything that kind of came after the 50s. You can do it feasibly, realistically in that style, because split levels are a type of home rather than a type of style per se. So you could make a realistic home in any type of style. It doesn't necessarily have to be this more traditional ranch style, but that's what I'm going to be walking through with you today. Reading the floor plans for split level homes gets a little bit complicated because there's 3 levels, but then you're only seeing 2 here. So this is the basement lower level. So that is this little section down on the bottom with this garage. And then they put the top level as both of these levels. So it can be a little bit confusing, but basically this box right here is one level, and then this box over here is the other. And keep in mind that thing I said about split levels coming from a differentiation of space. So in order to make a realistic split level, you have different areas for different types of living. So in this floor plan, this garage, rec room, laundry, they have a little bathroom down here, the water tank, the electricity is probably in this area too. This is the more utility downstairs area. And then you go up these stairs and it spits you out up here, and you go into the kitchen, the dining, and then a living room, which is kind of different from the rec room or like a family room. It's just an additional living space. It could be a little bit more formal. It's where you might want to entertain guests, whereas downstairs might be your like messy, you know, the kids play down there kind of room. And then if you go up the stairs again, you get 3 bedrooms and a bathroom with this plan. Another website that I like for more retro plans is Family Home Plans, and if you just scroll on the retro plans, you can see that these are all pretty much older plans. And like here, for example, this is a split level house. This is a 4-bedroom, 3-bathroom, 2-car garage house, and it has a basement. I think this is a good example of a plan that would be helpful in terms of just like layout, because this layout is actually a little bit different in the fact that there is actually a bedroom in this downstairs like utility area I was talking about. I've seen other people say that this is how their houses are kind of laid out in real life. I've also seen people say this is a good like guest bedroom because the guest can have their own kind of privacy, or it could be like an office space alternatively. This is also a unique plan because it has a family room downstairs, but also a basement. And I think that the basement in this plan is an unfinished basement. Maybe your sim has a secret cider making operation. I don't know. But the way that this plan works is if you walk into the front door, you are on the foyer, which is technically on the 2nd level or 3rd if you're counting the basement, but the 2nd level of the actual like living spaces of the house. The living room is on the same level as the foyer, but if you go up, there's the dining room, a kitchen, and then the bedrooms are kind of alongside it. So this one's interesting. It doesn't have that differentiation of the kitchen, dining, and living being on a separate story as the bedrooms. So it's not always a steadfast rule, but I find that's why it's easier to follow a floor plan than just like go off the rails and do whatever you want. And if you go down, you end up in a family room. There's a 4th bedroom, like I said, the guest room, garage area, and then you can go down again into that basement. So this is an example of like 4 levels technically if you count the basement. 3 if you're not counting the unfinished basement. Another option for floor plans is the House Plan Company. This website I kind of hate because I feel like their plans are usually abominations. I'm going to be completely honest. These are very contemporary style homes. If you have a more contemporary style than I do, you might like this website. Keeping in mind the kind of general separation of spaces, I think I'm gonna do like a 3 split home where there's 2 stories and then 1 story on one side. And I think that I'm gonna follow that plan that I got off Click America. Okay, to begin to make a split level house. In this game, I find the easiest way to do this is to start with the garage. So I'm just gonna go ahead and place a little garage door. You can use the city living one, or you could download like a custom content kind of garage door. So this is the city living one. It has a particular look to it. I have downloaded some of these by Max 20 standard narrow garage door. We're gonna use the narrow one because this floor plan that I'm following has a family rec room kind of alongside the garage. So it's kind of gonna be a bit weird. It's gonna be a narrow garage and a narrow rec room, which might be a bit interesting to furnish in this game, but I'm not gonna be furnishing today, so I don't have to worry about that. I think I am gonna make this one longer so that 2 windows will kind of fit along there, but I think that all this is as wide as I want it to be, and I'm just gonna go ahead and make a square really quick. And then in order to get the split level thing, technically, it would be halfway between this level we're currently on and the upper level. It would kind of start at this halfway mark. But since we can't do that in this game, I find the easiest thing to do is to move this to medium wall height, which I know that people are really medium wall height haters, but in order to get the split level thing, I really think this is just truly so necessary. And then you can kind of work on adding in that other story. So I'm gonna add in the next floor. So I'm gonna go back like 2 boxes just because that's what the floor plan kind of looks like. But if you are someone who's kind of freehanding this a little bit more, usually these are kind of asymmetrical. One kind of side juts out a little bit more, has a little bit more space in it than the other. It's not usually a completely symmetrical home. And that's kind of because of the ranch style, but also just the nature of like a split level is like you're gonna need more space in certain living areas than you are necessarily others. So I'm gonna lift this platform of this building, I think about 3. And I'm gonna get a door because that's gonna help me make up my mind about how many to lift this. We could get like this door, which I've been obsessed with, but I might have better luck with something slightly less tall. Okay, I think I'm just gonna go for one of these doors. And the cool thing about this is that I can actually raise this platform a little bit more, which will be a little bit more realistic to how a split level looks. So now, you know, this level is kind of starting a bit under halfway up this wall, but this is kind of the closest that I can get it. If I did a tall wall height, we definitely could do more, but that would look ridiculous. So I usually go for medium wall height, and then this will kind of further the illusion if we place some windows. So once again, split levels have these kind of big picture windows. It's kind of a modernist building idea to have a lot of light come in. So I might do this one. And a lot of times also these will have decorative shutters, which are kind of ridiculous because they're like these little shutters on the side of these big windows. They clearly would not actually work in that space whatsoever, but certainly that would be kind of indicative of the ranch style. I'm gonna place these windows here, which that's gonna look a little bit ridiculous, but we're gonna see what we can do to kind of make that look a little bit less ridiculous. And you're gonna think to yourself, why is the door floating? Well, we're gonna keep in mind that a lot of these houses were built on sloped terrain, but first I am gonna make a porch. So let me grab a little square and make it the right height. I think that's about what we had. Is it not? Oh, it is. Perfect. And then we can add stairs like this. I'm gonna go for some old school kind of brick looking ones. You could also add in more levels here so that the stairs kind of go in a little L shape. I find that this is fairly common. And then something else that is really common in this kind of style home, especially if you're doing a more traditional like ranch style, is little flower boxes out front. So often there will be like a little box kind of around the porch area. This is just more of like a 50s design thing than necessarily a split level thing, but since I'm doing more of a 50s design, we can certainly do it here. So I can do like that, and those will be little flower boxes. It is a little bit close to the front of the lot, so I'm gonna move it back a little bit. So yeah, something like this, very evocative of the time, but you don't have to do it if you don't want to. But I'm gonna leave that the way that it is, and we're gonna work on the terrain. So I'm gonna kind of lift all this, and I'm lifting it kind of a ridiculous amount. I am not very good at landscaping in this game, so take everything I say with like a grain of salt and kind of smooth it to the edges of the lot so that it doesn't look completely ridiculous, hopefully, especially back here. This is looking kind of busted. And the way that this game works is there's gonna be this little like divot between the wall and the actual landscaping, and we're gonna hide that with like plants and bushes and stuff, because otherwise there's just simply no way. And I'm gonna kind of lift this back up to a particular level. I think like this is like a good height for all this to kind of just be a little bit more level at. And then, like I said, smooth the edge of the lot out a little bit more. And yeah, don't worry about the big divots. Once again, we will sort that. Top layer is going to be directly over this kind of garage space, but it kind of peeks over the edge just a little bit, which is gonna kind of help us to disguise the fact that this level is actually taller than maybe we would ideally want it to be. I'm gonna make it outdent just one, and then I'm gonna grab some of these wall sculptures and put little support beams here, because I see that on the little mock-up image of what this house is gonna look like. And something else that will help this whole illusion is painting the walls. So a lot of these ranch style homes have like a brick, faux brick lower level. It's not actually brick usually. Usually it's faux brick. So I'm gonna paint all of this, just this brick thing. And I'm gonna paint the plant boxes the same way. And then this section of the house is going to be siding. So in this photo, it's gonna be white. So we're gonna go for that. It's kind of a classic. I think really indicative of the more ranch style, and the kind of style that we're going for is these low pitched horizontal roofs. So we're putting a roof on like this, and you're just gonna make it really low eaves. So like that. Could do it horizontal this way, but in this plan, this one is actually more oriented like this, but you're still gonna keep the pitch of the roof really low. In this plan, these floors are closer together so that these two roofs can actually connect, but in this game, they can't be. So we're just doing our best here. And then windows for the upstairs, we're just gonna do some of these guys. So I have these shutters from Harry, coastal shutters, and I think that they're the right style for this. So I'm just gonna pick a color, probably red looks really nice. So we're gonna do some red shutters on these upstairs windows. It's a little bit too vibrant of red. Maybe we go for like a navy blue instead. Maybe even this lighter blue is kind of nice. We'll do that. We're gonna do the roof, which I'm gonna do maybe that one, or maybe this one. I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna get a roof trim. I just usually always go for these. Certainly there would be like painted roof trims. I just don't find them to look that realistic to me. And then I am gonna extend this roof out one, because that kind of leads to a little covered area there. And that was pretty common as well, as for the eaves to kind of extend out a little bit, especially because this layer extends out. I think that makes that look a little bit more cohesive. Some other things I'm just gonna add really quick to keep with this kind of realistic style is some drain little thingies on the edges of the house. These are with Get Together, but I think there's also a set from a more recent pack. I think that like Hobbies and Businesses has a set of these, and I'm certain that you could also get them as custom content if you really wanted to. Something else you could do is like a chimney. This plan doesn't have a chimney, but you could totally add one. I'm gonna add like a normal brick looking one, and I think I'm just gonna add it between these two levels and kind of the middle of the house. I think that makes it look a little bit more cohesive. And then concrete, I'm just gonna do a little concrete walkway out front. These I'm going to put brick on, and then a little bit of a light out front will also kind of add to the realistic feeling. So we'll do that. And then in order to do the landscaping on these split level homes, what you do is you get a bunch of bushes and you just try and fill in this little gapping area. Even with like this kind of grass is really nice because it kind of disguises the fact that the land actually cuts down into the house, which if the Sims team loved us, they would make it so that this went like direct to the house and it wasn't like this big weird empty spot. But we're working with what we got, and in this game this is what we got. So I also find that this plant from Live Edit, it's from Horse Ranch, is also really good for kind of filling these little gap areas. So I'm just gonna bring these in as well. Sizing things up and down is also pretty helpful. And I also find that having one of these planting boxers can really help you merge some of this stuff because it can kind of cut into there and it doesn't impede on an actual walkway or anything. And then you can just hide it with like shrubs later or something, which is kind of why I opted to have one between this kind of piece of land and then this porch area, because then what I can do is I can go in and just add like, you know, some hydrangeas in here and it'll disguise the fact that I've actually done a little bit of landscaping to hide that area. And I find that the unkempt kind of feel can add to the realism. It definitely depends on what you're going for, and there's certainly ways to kind of disguise this landscaping doing a less organic looking kind of vibe, but you could certainly try and do this with a more organized looking yard. I just like the kind of messy, overgrown bushes look. I think it disguises stuff a little bit better personally. And I am going to use Tool to kind of move this particular plant down just because I want this plant in particular. And yeah, that's like exactly where I wanted it. Okay, now for the part that's actually going to transform it into a split level, the inside of the build. First off, I'm going to start with just kind of walling off a general garage space. So we're going to do like one of those. And then in this floor plan, there's a rec room right next to it, which would make this area right here kind of the rec room. And it is an awkwardly shaped room. So certainly it would be a bit odd to furnish in The Sims. And then there's the up and the down. So this area, I'm just gonna delete the walls really quick. And I'm gonna get out some lights just so that we can see what's going on here. So the hardest part is going to be connecting not this level to this level, but this level to this level. So these are the two levels that need to be connected, and you're going to notice that there's no way in The Sims to put stairs between these two levels. So what we're going to do is kind of make up the floor plan a little bit. So this isn't going to be probably in your actual floor plan. In the floor plan, it's going to look like this level magically connects to the level above it, and you might struggle a bit with that. At least I've just noticed that over and over again following these floor plans in preparation for this video, that is an issue that I'm like constantly kind of running into. So I'm going to extend this kind of out to there and get a set of stairs, doesn't matter which, and I'm just gonna do that, and then boom, stairs up. And I think I'm gonna want the stairs to be one more over. Yes, because we're gonna need room for a bathroom in this little corner once we do the floor plan for upstairs. So I think the stairs are gonna be down there. Don't worry, we're gonna hide this with a wall. So we're just gonna draw a wall like that, wall down there, because this area is like the laundry. And I think this whole house is actually a little bit wider than it needs to be, which is good because we need room for this back patio. So I'm actually gonna shrink the whole downstairs. The upstairs I'm gonna leave like this because it can kind of add to this kind of design style of it all. And then we're gonna do stairs right next to this going up into this living space. And I am gonna do this one too wide, and then I'm gonna do another wall right there. And we can do some little handrails on both these stairs. So it's a pretty small rec room. That's okay. I think that that's perfectly acceptable for The Sims 4 to just have like a little rec area. Maybe this is like a crafts room. This is going to be a bathroom, and then this area is going to be a laundry and like water heater space. And I'm deviating a little bit from the original floor plan, but I just think that that works better within the confines of this game. I do think I'm going to pull a car into this garage just to get a sense of scale, because I kind of want to dip into it just a little bit in order to place the door and have it not look add. So yeah, here's a custom content car. So I do have space to kind of do this if I want to, which I think I do want to. And then I want to pull this one more that way and then put a door kind of between. I don't really like putting doors all the way in a corner, although sometimes it does happen. Okay, since this isn't going to be a furnished house, I'm just going to delete the car, and then we're going to get into this side floor plan. Like I've been saying, there's kind of this emphasis on open floor plans. Even though the areas of living are split into separate areas, allowing for more privacy, there's still this kind of push in modernism towards open floor plans. So this whole area is kind of gonna just remain one room, and I'm just gonna delineate it with some walls in order to just kind of separate out where the kitchen is gonna go. So this little corner is gonna be the kitchen, the dining is gonna go in this area, and then this big space for the living room, and then there's a little entry foyer way, which I am gonna just draw like a little wall there just to kind of separate it out, but it's still a very open floor plan. And one of the things we talked about as kind of being indicative of the style is a sliding glass door onto a patio. So I am going to place a patio out back, which is going to be a bit hard because we have this like landscaping situation. So I'm going to place one of these. It does need to be raised the same amount as the interior so that the door opens right onto the patio instead of like dropping 8 feet. And you could actually kind of smooth out the landscaping a little bit more so that you don't even really have to fully deal with this. It'll make this side of the house look a bit odd because there will just be like this random spot where it kind of changes. Once again, landscaping is your friend. You can hide pretty much everything with landscaping. I'm just gonna do like a little patio kind of thing. I might make it brown, and then I think I might also make like the fencing on this brown as well. Make it look a little bit less weird, I might extend the patio all the way out to that edge there. That kind of helps. And then I'm gonna get like a wood board to kind of stick on here. And then I'm gonna work on windows. So I think because it's the kitchen, the best window is gonna be like a short, kind of like skinny one. So let me find that one. I like this one actually. So I think I'm gonna use like this one from Snowy Escape. There's also that new one that we got, which could totally work here too, but it's a little bit wider, and I think I want just like one that's a little bit smaller of a size. So I'm gonna grab that one, and then that leaves a perfect spot for the sink to be right below where the window will go, which I love to do in my kitchens. This layout actually turns out pretty similar to the one I did in my speed build. Incidentally, that was not on purpose, but we did kind of just end up that way. And that leaves us with, last but not least, the upstairs. So once again, this is gonna be a bathroom right off the bat. And then this is a bit of a closet area for this bedroom right here. And the hallway kind of dips in like this. This is a bedroom, and then this is a bedroom, and then there's a bedroom over here. This hallway is a bit awkward, but it kind of is what it is. And doors, which I think I'm gonna try and put this door in the corner, which I don't like doing, but I think that's just what we're gonna have to do with this layout. I think I actually am gonna do this door on this diagonal here so that I can add a closet to this room as well, so that every room has a closet. The bathroom is pretty big. Like, this is a huge bathroom, but that's okay. I find that huge bathrooms are actually a bit easier to give a bit more personality than like really small ones. And they don't really have a bathroom in this area. They're gonna have a bathroom down here, so this is gonna be a little bit annoying for gameplay. I will say, split levels, so annoying to play in, because if you have hampers in this whole section, your Sims have to go down not 1 but 2 sets of stairs to get to the laundry room. And in real life, I think that is the disadvantage as well for split level homes, is just like, if you're gonna have to take the stairs, and there's an extra barrier in this game where your sim won't do the thing that you want the sim to do. I think equally hard in real life to park your car in the garage and then lug your groceries up at least a flight of stairs. And then I'm gonna put these closets in. I think I'm gonna put that one on that side, this one right there, this one right there. There's gonna be like a little one thing gap, that's okay. And then it's just a matter of like windows and putting appliances in. So I think it's safe to just copy the windows onto the back of the house. And then I do want to add more windows on this side of the house as well. And then I think because this is like the garage, we're going to do some of these like tall windows. Maybe this is an opportunity to use that new one that I was talking about that's a little bit wider. And then I also want to put another door in out here so that they can just exit the house from onto the ground level, not the patio. So we're going to do that. And then probably another one of these windows over here. This is a little bit awkward, so we'll have to come up with a way to kind of make this look a bit less awkward, probably with landscaping. Like I said, it's your friend. So for example, like this bush, perfect. Just stick it in there, size it down one, stick it right there. And then add in some of this landscaping from over here. So something like these guys. I'm gonna put it around the edges of that. Doesn't need to be perfect. And I might slide this one over slightly because it doesn't need to be right up against it. And then a light, once again, will really help. We could even get one of those like faux roof things from the wall sculptures category. And it'll also help if I turn off live edit so that there's less stuff cluttering this spot. There's also like this one, which is just a bit much. I want to keep like the same like low eave look. Like that one maybe. Is there like a version of this with white? Yes. So we could do that. We'll make it look maybe a bit less awkward, maybe more awkward. Depends on how you feel. Okay, and so that's kind of the full split level tutorial. So this is kind of the downstairs, the garage, this little utility space, probably going to be laundry or whatever you have, bathroom, upstairs, kind of this living, dining, kitchen area. And then you go up these stairs to the bedroom area. There's a big bathroom here with plenty of space for storage or litter boxes or any kind of thing that you want to put in your game. And then a primary bedroom, and then one slightly smaller bedroom, and then one of the smallest bedrooms. So this could be like a nursery or a kid's room, or just another bedroom, obviously. You would just continue to kind of do the landscaping, more landscaping on this side, around these kind of areas would really help it all kind of come together. All right, I cut away and I finished up all the kind of little decorations on the outside and just made it all ready to be posted. So if you want to download this, like I said, all the tray files will be in the description for both the furnished family home that I did and then also this shell, which, as I said, will be available just kind of in its current state. So everything on the inside is pretty much the same as we left off. It's mainly just the outside that I changed. I just kind of added in some more stuff. I added stairs down the deck because I feel like that just made sense. And then, yeah, just finishing it all up. And so that is how this house turned out. So that's kind of everything that I had to say about split level homes in this video. I hope that this was helpful in your endeavor to create realistic split level homes in The Sims 4. And once again, please let me know if you like this, if you want to see more architecture deep dives. I would be so happy to do so. And if you want to see more of my content, there will be videos on the screen right now. And as always, thank you for watching.